using Spring Security. Decrypt password encoder. User test user2 is created. DaoAuthenticationProvider. Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to Think Constructive. I am Isha. In this session, I will be discussing how to store user credentials in the database and then how to authenticate and authorize your Java Spring Boot applications with the stored user credentials using Spring Security. This session is going to be very helpful for all the Java developers, Java lead and Java architect. So stay connected, watch the session till the end so that you are not going to miss upon on any of the core concepts. Here you can see a bookstore project. We will be doing this demonstration with our bookstore project, which we are building as a part of this series of session. If you have missed watching those sessions, session details are getting displayed on the screen right now and links are tagged in the description box below as well as in the above card section. Feel free to explore those sessions. Meanwhile, I'll give you a quick summary of the project, whatever we have built till now. So what we have done till now, I'll just give you the quick overview of that. So we have built book controller. With the help of book controller, what we have done, we have exposed the REST APIs for bookstore. There is a welcome bookstore REST API, which doesn't have any authentication or authorization. Other than that, we have CRUD available for the bookstore, wherein get book, get all book, create books, update books and delete book APIs are written. Alright, so these APIs are well authenticated and authorized. Fine. I'll come back to that, what kind of authentication we have done in this and what next we are going to do. So for the book controller, we have built a book entity. Okay. Here is the book entity. Here is the book DTO. Fine. And for book DTO to entity, entity to DTO, book mapper. Fine. For storing books in the database, we have extended Mongo repository as we are building this project with the help of Java Spring Boot and MongoDB as a database. And here is the service layer in which we have defined the book service interface and the implementation of that. Fine. So all these things we have done till now. In addition to that, for the security configuration, we have also created a SecurityConfig file, and in this SecurityConfig, we have created UserDetailsService. We have defined certain in-memory users. Okay, you can see here in-memory user details manager is being called along with all these three user details. Fine. There is a password encoder, and you can notice what we are doing. We are using decrypt password encoder because to use password as a plain text is never ever a good practice. So password has to be encrypted and decrypted as per the need. Fine. After that, we have defined security filter chain. In the security filter chain, what we have given, we have defined that bookstore welcome API should be permitted all. That means there is no authentication needed for this API. Other than this API, if there is any other API request, everything has to be authenticated. Fine. This is what we have covered till now. So authentication and authorization we have done, but the authentication what we have done is with the help of in-memory user details manager. That means in the code itself, we are defining the username and password, and those username and passwords are only allowed to use as a login credentials. But let's say if I want to add one more user, or if I want to change any user one password, or to do any changes in these users, add or delete new user or update any user details, every time what I am supposed to do, I will have to open the code, change the code and then redeploy. So this is a problem which we do not want to face, right? In the production, every now and then, for such things we are not going to do the code changes, and otherwise also it's never ever a good practice to write the login credentials in the code itself. So as a next step, what we should be doing, we should be creating some mechanism so that these username and passwords can be stored in the database. Whenever any authentication request comes in, the user credentials which are stored in the database should be checked, and basis on the user credentials, authentication and authorization requests are either approved or rejected. Fine. So this is what we'll be doing now. So in order to do that, first of all, I will be commenting this in-memory user details manager code. Alright. So I'll quickly comment this code, and now from here these users will not be allowed to access any resource of this project. So now the next step, what we'll be doing, we will be first creating the complete user information flow. That means we should be able to create user information via REST API, and those user information, essentially the user credentials, should be stored in the database. So in order to do so, we should be creating user entity, user DTO, user repository and service layers, and then finally we should be exposing user registration API. Alright, let us start creating user information entity, and we'll be doing that with the help of Lombok. So let us include Lombok dependency in pom.xml. Alright, so in pom.xml, so here is a pom.xml, and in this pom.xml you can notice we have included Spring Boot starter security dependency. Fine. And down below here we will include Lombok dependency. So let us see how can we get Lombok dependency. Here I will just open a Spring initializer. Fine. And from a Spring initializer I will select Java Maven, because we are using Maven build, and we'll just click on add dependency. Here we will search Lombok. Fine. So Lombok dependency, and then we will say explore. The moment we do that, we should be able to get Lombok dependency here. You can see org.project Lombok, artifact ID Lombok, and optional true. Fine. So this complete dependency we will copy. Fine. And we will paste it here in the pom.xml. Cool. Yeah. And we will refresh Maven dependencies so that it should be able to identify and include Lombok dependency in the project. So our Maven build is successful. We have got a green tick here. Fine. Now here in the entity folder, we will just say right click, new Java class, and here we will give name to our entity, which is user info. So let us keep this name. Fine, user info, and hit enter. So let me add this to the Git also, because this project is getting synced up with the Git also. So let us provide user info fields here. So first of all, let us have username, private, string, user name. Fine. Then we will say private, string, password. That's another field which we would like to have. And then we will have, let's say, private string, string roles. Fine. We will just provide bare minimum information, username, password, roles. In addition to that, you can have other user information also, such as user address, email, phone number, whatever is needed. Fine. For now, for this project, we will have this bare minimum information, that is username, password, and roles. So in order to make this entity and provide all the getter, setter, constructor, all those stuffs, let us just provide the Lombok annotations and things will be done. Fine. So I will just say data. So you can notice it is coming from Lombok. Enter. Fine. Then we will have all argument constructor. That's again coming from Lombok. This is what we need. And we will have one more annotation, no args constructor also. Fine. So these three annotations I'll be putting, and that's it. So I need not to generate any specific getter setters for this user info or any other constructor, because after putting these three Lombok annotations, such things are already done for us. Fine. So user info entity is created. So next thing, we will be creating user info DTO, because that will be the data transfer object, and user info DTO will be used to communicate over REST APIs. Fine. So I will just say Java class and I will select record and will provide user info DTO. Fine. So this user info DTO I am creating as a record. If you want, you can use Lombok here also. So I'm just showing you both the ways. Fine. So first property or first field which I would like to give is user name. Fine. Then string password and then string roles. Essentially all the same three fields I am providing here also, because I have already kept bare minimum fields. So all three fields I am taking for user info DTO also. Cool. Yeah, I'll just save it. And you can notice I have added both the files to Git also, because this project is getting synced up with that. I have already provided GitHub link in the description box below, so you can get the project code from there also. Fine. Now we will create user info mapper. I'll just say new Java class and I will say user info mapper. Fine. I'll just say add to Git. In user info mapper, I will be writing both the converters, that is DTO to entity, entity to DTO. Fine. So here let's create public static. My bad. I'll just say, yeah, public static user info DTO should be return type, and I will just say to DTO. Yeah. And herein I will be providing user info entity, because this is what I am trying to convert to DTO. Fine. So herein I will write the conversion code. So I will just say return new user info DTO, and here I will be providing all the parameters. So how will I get those parameters? I will take it from user info dot. Let me just import this. Fine. And then I will just say user info dot get username. Fine. User info dot get password and user info dot get roles. Yeah. So now you can notice my user info entity is converted to user info DTO or mapped, whichever way you are comfortable. Now we will write one more method, public static user info. Fine. And this time we will say to entity. And here what we will provide user info DTO. Yeah. And herein we should be returning user info, because we are trying to convert from DTO to entity. Right. And we should be providing the required parameters to the constructor, user info DTO dot username, user info DTO dot password and user info DTO dot roles. Cool. Yeah. So now user info DTO, which is provided here, is converted to user info entity. So both the mappers are created now. Fine. So now next we will be creating repository layer for user info. Fine. So I will just say new Java class. I will select interface, because essentially for repository layer we should be writing interface, and I will give name as user info repository. Fine. Add it to Git, and this interface user info repository should extends Mongo repository. And Mongo repository, you can notice is expecting two parameters. One is entity, another one is ID. I mean, T is entity data type we should be giving, right? So Mongo repository, and here my entity type is user info, fine, and ID type is string. So these two parameters I have provided. Now as a next step, by default Mongo repository will provide me basic CRUD operations. So if I am supposed to use only them, I need not to write anything else here. But in our scenario, what do I want? I want to search by username. So basis on the username, I would like to find the entity and perform further operations basis on that. Fine. So for that, I would like to give find by username. I would like to search by username. So let's say I'm giving my method name as find by username, and herein I will give string username. Fine. So username I will be providing, and it should be able to give me back the user entity. So what am I expecting? I am expecting user entity. So I will be giving user info as return type. And not necessarily all the time whatever username I am searching for will be found. So if it doesn't find, it will return null. So for that, I will just give optional here. So it will take care of that, and I will just cover it like this. Fine. So what I have done, I have provided find by username method as an extra on top of basic CRUD operations, whatever Mongo repository is providing. The next step, I will be writing the service layer. For service layer, first of all, I should be defining service interface. Fine. So I will just say new Java class. I will select interface, and then I will give user info service. Fine. Add it to Git. So here for user info service, what would I like? I would define one create user info method, with the help of which I should be able to expose register user API. Fine. So what do I do? Let's say I will just say public. I would like to write a public method user info DTO. Let's say it should be returning, and then I will say create user, and then for create user I'll provide user info DTO, right? And let us import this. This method will be used at service layer and will further pass the information with the help of repository layer to the database, and will create user in the database. Fine. Now let us implement this user info service. So for that, we will go to impl and we'll say Java class user info service impl. Fine. Enter. Add. And this class will be implementing user info service, the interface which we have just now defined. So let us annotate this as service, then only this will be identified as a service. Fine. And here we are supposed to implement the method of user info service. So let me just say implement methods, create user. It is asking me to implement. By default, it will say it is returning null. So we will write the implementation for this. So for implementing this, we understand that service layer will be talking to repository layer for further database operations. So we should be auto wiring our user info repository here. So I will just say auto wire what? User info repository. Fine. And we will be auto wiring one more thing. If you remember, I will just open SecurityConfig, and herein what we have implemented password encoder, and we are using the implementation of bcrypt password encoder. So this is one more thing which we should be auto wiring there. So I'll just copy, come back to user info service import. Let us auto wire the password encoder which we have implemented in SecurityConfig. Fine. So I will just say public password encoder and then password encoder. Fine. Let us start implementing create user. So for that, first of all, let us convert user info DTO to entity. For that, let us have user info equals, what am I supposed to do? I will just call the mapper method what we have created. User info mapper dot to entity, and herein we will be passing the user info DTO which we have got via create user. Fine. So what we have got now? We have got user info DTO converted to user info entity. Now the next step, we should be setting password here with the help of encoder. How do we do that? We will just say user info dot set password, and here we will be using password encoder dot encode method we should call, and herein we should be providing the raw password which we have received via DTO. Fine. So we can do it via user info entity also, doesn't matter. We will just say get password. We have got the plain text password and that is further encoded using bcrypt password encoder and is set to user info entity finally. Fine. And then next step, we should be calling the repository save method to save this information to Mongo database. So I will just say user info repository dot save I should be calling, and inside this save I will pass user info entity. Fine. And finally we should be able to return this information. So let's say I would like to return the complete DTO back that the user is created. So how do we do that? We will just say user info mapper dot to DTO, and herein I will just say user info. Fine. So what we have done, we have created create user method, converted the user DTO to entity, set the password with the help of password encoder. So encoded password is set to user info entity, and finally user info entity is saved in the database and that is finally returned. Fine. So my service layer is also ready. I'll just quickly save it, and the next step is now we will be exposing the user registration endpoint. How should we do that? We should be adding a user info controller to this controller package. So I will just say new Java class, and here I will just say user info controller. Fine. And it is asking me to add this to Git. So let us add it. So we have added user info controller, and now let us first annotate it as REST controller. Fine. And let us have request mapping as user info. So all the detailing of this request mapping and how to expose the complete CRUD operations, we have already done that for book controller with all the detailed explanation. You can follow this series right from the first video and you'll get all the detailed information for these things there. Video links are given in the description box below. So here for request mapping in double quote, I will just say user -info. So this will be the request mapping, and here in user info controller, I should be exposing a register endpoint. So since it will be using service layer, so I should first auto wire my user info service. I just say user info service. Fine. So I have auto wired it. So now let us expose the endpoint. So I will just say public. Fine. response entity, and here in the response entity is string. Fine, we will be returning some string response. We'll just say create user info, and here from request body I would like to extract the values in the form of user info DTO. Fine, and here inside this method I will be calling my service layer for further processing. I mean further saving the username and password in the database. Fine, so I will just say user info DTO. User info DTO 1 is equal to user info service dot create user. Fine, just now we have created this method and we should pass user info DTO which we have received from the request. Fine, and we should return new response entity, and here in the response entity let's say I would like to have a message user. Let's say I would like to concatenate username here, whatever we have received after saving it from the database. So user info DTO1 dot username. Fine, and then further concatenate and write is created. Fine, and then HTTP response status OK, or let us have created. Fine, so what we have done, we have created create user info. Fine, we have called it service layer create user method and returned user created response back, and let us now annotate it with post mapping. Why post mapping? Because we are creating something, storing something, so it will be a post request. So let's say I would like to expose this URL as register, because this is user registration process, so I would like to expose this URL as register. So we'll now test whether we are able to register the user or not, and in the database we will see whether my password is stored as a plain text or as a encrypted password. Fine, these two things we will test now, and then we will further proceed that with the created user which we are creating in the database, whether we are able to authenticate and authorize our Spring application or not. Fine, or rather Spring Boot application or not. So for everything, let us first bring up the application. So I'll just run this application. So my application is up and running. As you can see, Tomcat started on port 8080. Started bookstore application. Let's open Postman and MongoDB and see whether we are able to create the user info or not, and then whether that info is stored in the database or not. Fine. Here is the Postman window, and let us open bookstore test. Here let's create one more request. Change the request type to post. And let's verify what is the context path for our user info register. So here it is, user info. So we will give here local host 8080 / user info / register. All right. So this is my request, and then in the body, since it is post request, so I should be providing some information in the body. The information which I would like to create, store in the database. So I will give user name, and the username let's give as test user1. Okay, then we'll give password because that's another field we have created, and let's give password as pass1, and then let us give one more field which is roles, because one user can have multiple roles. So for now let me create just one role for now. So I will just say role _ admin. Fine. So this is the post request body which I am sending. Let us hit send. The request is unauthenticated. So let us see what we have missed in our code. So let's go back to SecurityConfig. In SecurityConfig, in security filter chain, request.request matchers we have created for bookstore welcome permit all. That means /bookstore/welcome URL is permitted all. That means no authentication is needed, but other than that any other request should be authenticated. But logically for user creation we are not supposed to do any authentication, otherwise we won't be able to create any user, right? So let me just bypass that user info register also. So I'll just put a comma here. Inside double quote I will put /userinfo/register. So let me just copy that exact URL. So this is the one and I will put it here. /userinfo/register. This is the URL which we have exposed for user creation. Let me just restart the application. Fine, application is up and running now. Now this time let us again try to send this request and see what happens. Send. What message I am getting? Test user 1 is created. Alright, so that means test user 1 should be now present in the database with the encrypted password and roles as role_admin. So let's open MongoDB Compass and verify. So here is the MongoDB Compass and Spring Boot MongoDB Bookstore app. So this is our application. So we have just now connected it in the My Database. Now you can see earlier we used to have only book. This time we have got user info also. And user info, there is one record with test user 1. You can see. And password, you can see it's encrypted password. That means I'm not able to read this password. It's not a plain text one. And roles as we had given role_admin. So this is one user we are able to create. Fine. Now let us bring down the application and proceed further. So further next steps are we should be able to authenticate bookstore CRUD operations with the help of this user. Before that, let us create one more user because we have just now created only admin and we should have role as user also. So let me just give test user 2 pass 2 and herein for instead of role_admin I will just give role_user. Fine, fair. I'll just say send. Test user 2 is created, you can notice, and we have got 2 not 1 created. We will verify it from MongoDB also. So let me just refresh it and this time you can see 2 users, test user 1, test user 2. One is role as admin, another one is role as user. Fine. Now let us come back to IntelliJ, bring down the application and proceed with the next steps, wherein what we will be doing, we will be now enabling this application so that this can authenticate and authorize with these users which we have just now stored in the database. Fine. For that, we will be now making use of 2 essential interfaces which are provided to us by Spring Security. One is UserDetailsService, another one is UserDetails. Let us first write the mechanism to load the user for verification by Spring Security. Fine. For that, what we will be doing, we will be implementing UserDetailsService which is already provided. So we will be doing that implementation inside Service Simple. We'll just say new Java class and we'll say user info user details service impl. You can give any name. I'm just trying to keep all the naming conventions aligned. So that is the reason I'm giving this name. You can give any name of your choice. So I'll just hit enter and we'll add it to Git also. And as I said, what we need to do, we need to implement UserDetailsService. I'll just tell you why UserDetailsService. Okay, implements UserDetailsService. Now it is giving me an error. And what is it saying? It is saying implement methods. Obviously, because UserDetailsService is an interface, so we are supposed to implement its methods. Okay, so let me just say implement. There is one method provided by UserDetailsService, that is loadUserByUsername. As name itself indicates, what this method is going to do, it will load user basis on the provided username from the database for the verification purposes. I'll just say OK, and the default implementation with returning null is here. Now let us just explore UserDetailsService a little more. So I am now inside UserDetailsService.java. What does this say? It's the core interface which loads user specific data. Fine. It is used throughout the framework as a user DAO and is a strategy used by DaoAuthenticationProvider. So since we are storing user in the database and further we are going ahead and retrieving user from the database for authentication purposes, that is why DaoAuthenticationProvider is coming into picture. As we discussed, that DaoAuthenticationProvider is essential for database authentications. Fine. And you can see its package is org Spring Framework Security Core. Fine. So it is provided by Spring Security. So, and what this load by username will do, it will locate user based on the username. So let us come back and implement this load user by username as per our need. Fine. So since it's going to talk to database, so for database things, we should have repository in place. We already have repository. What am I supposed to do? I will just say authorize and private user info repository, and I will say user info repository. Fine. And we will be using this user info repository in order to implement this load user by username. For that, what will I do? First of all, I will fetch user from the database and will take next actions. Fine. So what do? I will just have my entity class user info. Fine. And I will just call user info repository dot find user by username and the username which is coming from here. So I will just pass username here. It should be able to fetch the username. It will either fetch or it won't get. Fine. Let me just first import user info. Why is it not getting? What wrong I have done? User info, it's the same. Let me just retype it. User info. Yeah, it's here. Maybe some typing mistakes. And it's, you can notice it is giving me error. Fine. Change variable user info type to optional, because find by username will either find username or will not find. So in case it's going to return null, I should treat it with optional. Fine. So that is where it was giving me an error. So we have handled it. Fine. So we have received user info, but what this load user by username wants, it wants us to return user details. So the next thing, where are user details? How to get it? This is another important interface which we should be implementing. So this is also the part of Spring Framework .security. It provides core user information, and what all user information it is giving, you can see. So it will give granted authorities, essentially roles, password, username, account validity, whether it is logged, expired, credentials are valid, expired or not, and enabled or disabled. So all this information it provides. So what we are supposed to do, we are supposed to implement this user details according to our need, and then those user details we should be returning from here, load user by username. All right, so let us first implement user details. How do we do that? Let us go to mapper and let us start implementing here, because this is a kind of mapping we are doing, right? So I'll just give the name as user info user details mapper. All right, so you can give any name and choose any other package if you wish. I found this place better, so I will be using it. I will be implementing it here. Add it to Git, and then I will say implements user details. Am I getting it? Yeah, it should be from security core. Alright, the moment I said implements user details, it is giving me an error because there are many methods to implement. I will just say implements all the methods. I will select all. Fine. Okay. So what is it giving me? It's telling me granted authorities, return null. I mean all the default implementations we have got here, and let us change wherever it is, wherever changes are needed. So let us first define the important fields. Fine. So I will just say private string username. Okay. Private string password. Private, oh, spelling mistake, and then private string roles. All right, so these three fields we have in our user info entity, and all three we have defined here. Fine, let us first do the necessary changes in password and username. So in the password, I will just say return whatever password is there in the password field. So I will just say return password instead of null. For username also return username instead of null. Okay, and remaining all these methods we can leave as it is. Now coming back to granted authorities. So authorities are essentially mapped to roles. Fine, so roles details are expected here. Let's have the naming convention same. So instead of roles, I will just say granted authorities. TIES. Yeah. Fine. And we'll return this granted authorities from here. And also let us change this string to list of granted authority. Fine. So granted authorities, password and username, everything we are returning as it is. Now from where the values to these fields would come, let us define them. So let us have a constructor for user info user details mapper, and we'll fill all these three fields in the constructor. Okay, so let us define the constructor, and we'll fill all these three fields inside the constructor. So we will just say public user info user details mapper. Okay, and inside this we should have user info entity. Okay, and let us import this entity, and now here we will say in the username, give the username whatever is there in the user info. Simple, right? The info dot get username. In the password, whatever is there in the password, let us have it user info dot get password. Fine. And in the granted authorities, we should provide the roles. So roles can be one or many. So that is the reason we have taken the list of granted authorities. Fine. For that, let us have granted authorities, and it will be the stream of arrays. So arrays dot stream, and inside this we should have user info dot get roles. Fine. That's the third field of user info, and these get roles we should split. So let us assume we are including the roles with the comma separated values. After this, we will create one more user wherein we will have 2 roles for single user with the comma separated values. Fine. So what will be the delimiter character for that? Comma. So I will just say split, and what is the regex for that? Comma. Fine. So with this, the roles will be separated. Fine. And then we should create a map of this. So I will just say dot map, and we will just say simple granted authority will be creating, because for each role a separate simple granted authority needs to be created. Fine. And then finally we will collect that. Fair enough. So with this code, what we have done, we have created a list of granted authorities for each role separately for the particular user, and its password is in the password field. So now my user details is populated for the given user info entity. Alright. So now let us come back to user info, user details service simple, and we will do final changes in this return, because we are supposed to return user details. So here what we have user info entity. Fine. It should be mapped to what? To user info, user details mapper, because that's the place from where we are going to get user details object, right? So we will just say user info user details mapper. Fine. And then if the user is found here, if the user is found, we will get a proper filled field of user details. What if the user is not found? So let us have the exception handling, a bit of exception handling here. So I will just say or else. Let's throw an exception. Fine. And then we will say new, and let's say user name not found exception, that is also provided by Spring Security. So let us use this exception as it is, and I will just say user. Let us concatenate username, and we'll say not found. Fine. A bracket is missing. That's where it's not understanding. Fine. What we have done, if the user is found, user details object is returned, otherwise an exception is thrown. So we have implemented these 2 essential interfaces. One is UserDetailsService and another one is UserDetails. So finally we are able to load users using DaoAuthenticationProvider from the database. And a final step, we should be creating the bean of authentication provider in SecurityConfig. Fine. So let us do that. So after this, let me just write public authentication provider. Okay. Authentication provider, and inside this we will be finally doing the DaoAuthenticationProvider invocation. So what will we do? DaoAuthenticationProvider. Okay. Let us construct an object for this. Alright. And then after this, we should be writing the user details service here. Then only it's finally going to invoke the implementations which we have just now done. Okay. So I will just say DaoAuthenticationProvider dot set user details service. And here I should be writing user details service. But we have not yet auto-wired the user details service here. So let us go up and do that. Okay. So here I will just say auto-wire private user details service. Alright. And then we should be passing this user details service here. Okay. And we should also write the password encoder here. Fine. Set password encoder for encryption and decryption of the password. This step is essential. And then finally, we should be returning DaoAuthenticationProvider. Alright. So that's it. And yeah, one more important stuff. Let us annotate it as bean. Alright. What we have done, we have created a bean of authentication provider so that DaoAuthenticationProvider can come into picture and apply security, Spring Security, authentication and authorization using database username and password. Alright, so we have defined authentication provider. Let us go back and check our user info, user details service simple. It is implementing user details service, all good. But yeah, one more thing, we should be annotating it as service. Fine. And let us check our user info, user details mapper. All good. Here, all good. And in security config, we have defined user details service. I mean, auto wired it. And we have created a bean of DaoAuthenticationProvider. Alright, so let us bring up the application and see how it works. Let us open Postman window and perform some testing. So here is a Postman window. Couple of minutes back we have created 2 users. Let us create one more user, test user 3, pass 3 with 2 rows. One is role underscore user, another one is role underscore admin. Fine. And let us hit send. Test user 3 is created. Fine. Let us verify this user from Mongo Compass. In MongoDB Compass, let us refresh it and see the third user with 2 rows is registered. So now let us come back to Postman and let us try doing some testing on the bookstore. So let me just open book controller, and here in the book controller, if you notice, welcome URL is free. I mean, anybody can access that. Get book by book ID can be accessed only by user. Get all books can be accessed by admin. Create book, update book and delete book can also be accessed only by admin. Alright. So let us first try to get all books and then we will see get book by book ID. So here is the get request. Let me just remove a particular book name from here. Auth type will remain basic auth, and this time I should be giving username as test user 1. I believe test user 1 was the admin and pass 1. Fine. Or let's check it from MongoDB Compass. So test user 1 has role as admin. This is what we want. Test user 1 with role as admin we want, so that we should be able to get all the books. So password as pass1 send. So we are able to get all the books. because admin is allowed to get all the books. Test user 2 has role as user. So let me just change it to test user 2, pass 2 and send. See, I'm getting access to the resources prohibited. So it's not authorized to access get all books. Let's say I want to query only for book B2. So user is allowed to query for a particular book. So let's see how it works. Send. So I'm able to get book B2. Its name is MongoDB. Price is listed here. Author is this. Excellent. Fine. So here we have successfully tested our admin user as well as role as user. So whatever coding we are doing, its GitHub link is mentioned in the description box below. Feel free to explore the code or get the code from the GitHub and refer it whenever needed. So in this session, we are able to store user credentials in the database. We developed the complete user information flow right from the controller till the database, and we used those login credentials for authenticating and authorizing our bookstore REST APIs using Spring Security. So I hope you are able to follow along and you are also able to secure your project using Spring Security. If you have any doubts, feel free to ask all your doubts in the comment section below. If you haven't yet subscribed, subscribe now and hit the like button. Share the channel and session details with your friends, family and colleagues, because that is how we will grow more stronger together. See you in the next session. Bye for now.